Welcome to the Daily News on September 27th in 2021. Today we start in London in the UK. According to the government, British soldiers might step in an emergency to supply gas stations with the necessary fuel. If that can help, we will use them, confirmed Transport Secretary Grant Shapps in a BBC interview on Friday. The Times had previously reported on the possible use of the military in the event that the current crisis continues to worsen. As the country suffers from an acute shortage of truck drivers, both BP and Esso have temporarily closed several of their gas stations in the UK. The UK government urged consumers not to panic anyway. The Sun headline on Friday, however, with a last drop of the tank tap and the headline, "We are running on empty." When asked, the Ministry of Defense pointed out that a civilian party had to make a request before soldiers could be deployed. According to the industry, the missing 100,000 truck drivers also pose considerable problems for the food sector and many other industries. However, the government has so far refused to change the visa rules to use foreign workers. Many of them left the country because of Brexit and Corona. Shapps, however, denied that the UK's exit from the EU was one of the reasons for the crisis and above all blamed the pandemic. Yeah, tell that to yourself. But now let's go to Toronto in Canada. Meng Wanzhou, the chief financial officer of the Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei, who was detained in Canada, was released after reaching an agreement with the US judiciary. Meng arrived in China on Saturday, according to state media, after a Canadian court suspended extradition proceedings against her and lifted her bail requirements. In return, China released two Canadians imprisoned in the People's Republic. The Huawei finance director was arrested in December 2018 at the instigation of the United States on a layover in Vancouver. The US judiciary accused Meng of bank fraud in connection with the Iran sanctions and demanded her extradition. Meng's lawyers, however, spoke of abuse of procedure. The Chinese government accused the US of targeting Huawei. The 49-year-old daughter of the Huawei company founder Ren Zhengfei had to stay under strict conditions in a property in the western Canadian city for almost 3 years. On Friday, a US court approved an agreement between Meng and the prosecutor. A Justice Department representative told a federal court in New York that some sort of probation procedure has been agreed. The allegations against the top manager should therefore be suspended and dropped entirely in December 2022 if Meng adheres to the conditions. A court in Vancouver then stopped the extradition proceedings against Meng. "In the past 3 years, my life has been turned upside down," Meng told journalists after the hearing. And she said, "It was a tough time for me as a mother, wife, and manager, but I believe that rain is followed by sunshine." The time in Canada was also a valuable experience for her. As seen on Canadian television, Meng boarded a plane to the Chinese economic metropolis of Shenzhen on Friday evening. The Chinese government called the allegations against Meng baseless and spoke of political persecution. The so-called fraud charge against Meng Wanzhou is fictitious, the state television broadcaster CCTV quoted a spokeswoman for the State Department on Saturday. The case had sparked a diplomatic crisis between China and Canada. A few days after Meng's arrest, Chinese authorities arrested two Canadians. Businessman Michael Spavor and ex-diplomat Michael Kovrig were tried in March on charges of espionage. Spavor was sentenced to 11 years in prison in August for espionage and the illegal disclosure of state secrets. The verdict against Kovrig was still pending. Shortly after Meng's release, the two Canadians were released on Friday and allowed to leave the country. They arrived in Calgary in Western Canada on Saturday morning. There they were met at the airport by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, as seen on CTV. The arrest of the two Canadians was seen as retaliation for Meng's detention in Canada and as leverage against the Ottawa government. Canada and other Western states accused Beijing of hostage diplomacy. Huawei is one of the world's largest telecommunications equipment manufacturers and a leader in 5G technology. The US in particular accuses Huawei of being too close to the Chinese authorities and sees the group as a threat to their cybersecurity. There are also fears of this kind in Germany, by the way, where I'm sitting right now. The Chinese group again rejected the US allegations in connection with the Iran sanctions on Saturday. Huawei will continue to defend itself against the allegations before the US federal court in New York, said the company. And now let's go to Sardinia in Italy. As soon as the former head of the Catalan regional government, Charles Puigdemont, left the plane, he was arrested. You might have heard this in another video of mine. The Italian border police had been waiting for the prominent refugee on Thursday. He was arrested because the Spanish judiciary in the city of Alghero in northwestern Sardinia, the Spanish judiciary wanted that from the Sardinians. But just one day later, according to media reports, Puigdemont was already at large again. Accordingly, the Italian judge Plinia Atzena let the Catalan run again on Friday, on one condition. He was not allowed to leave the island until the question of a transfer to Spain has been resolved, the judge decided. Puigdemont was elected MEP in 2019. His problems with the Spanish judiciary, which accuses him of rebellion, go back to 2017. At that time, the Spanish police tried very hard to stop an illegal independence referendum held in Catalonia on October 1st. Since almost only those in favor of the secession voted, there was a large majority in favor of independence. After Puigdemont proclaimed the region's independence and immediately suspended it, he was deposed by Madrid and Catalonia was placed under the direct administration of the central government. Puigdemont and some of his colleagues fled abroad. The leading separatists who did not flee were sentenced to long prison terms of between 9 and 13 years in 2019, but were pardoned last June. Puigdemont's Spanish lawyer Gonzalo Boye had already expressed confidence on Friday that his client would soon be released. Puigdemont's Italian lawyer Agostinangelo Maras had made a similar statement. He is confident that the case will be resolved as soon as possible and that he will be free again quickly, the Italian told the news agency ANSA. The temporary fixation of Puigdemont in Italy is not only politically but also from a legal perspective quite explosive. The Catalan is currently defending himself in the EU court against the fact that the European Parliament lifted his immunity as a member of Parliament by majority vote in March. He also applied for the provisional restoration of parliamentary immunity pending the final decision of the Court of Justice. However, this was rejected by the responsible judge, among other things on the grounds that Spain had assured that the arrest warrant against Puigdemont would not be enforced until the court had finally decided on extradition issues. Puigdemont's Belgian lawyer Simon Beckert was accordingly outraged that Puigdemont had even been prosecuted by the police when he entered the country. Arrested, not prosecuted. Either Italy made a mistake or Spain has deceived the European Court of Justice, he commented on Friday. Beckert told the German press agency in Brussels that a new urgent application to restore parliamentary immunity to the European Court of Justice in Luxembourg was already being prepared. This should be submitted if the Italian authorities should arrange a transfer of Puigdemont to Spain. The court recently made it clear that Puigdemont should neither be arrested nor extradited until the litigation has been finally resolved, said Beckert. It was expressly stated that in the event of arrest, a new application for an interim order to restore parliamentary immunity could be filed. For Fulco Lanchester, an Italian professor and constitutional law expert at La Sapienza Universitat in Rome, the matter is so clear that he assumes that Puigdemont deliberately took the risk of short-term arrest. In my opinion, this was a deliberate move by Puigdemont, he said, to draw attention to his cause. He took a calculated risk in order to look for the public. He told that to the German press agency. It is difficult to believe that someone who is wanted with an international arrest warrant and who does not enjoy immunity has not deliberately brought about such an arrest. It's an idea, I must say. The place of arrest is also very symbolic. Alghero, which is also called Little Barcelona, is a Catalan language island in Sardinia. The Catalans had conquered the area at the end of the 14th century, displacing the local population. Puigdemont has traveled to the island to take part in the Folk Festival, an event aimed at spreading Catalan culture. About 1,000 Catalans also traveled there, from whom he could expect that they would speak out loudly for their president in exile and the independence of Catalonia. Puigdemont could use such public support. As the determining force in the camp of the unyielding separatists, he has fallen somewhat behind when the more moderate current regional president of Catalonia, Per Aragonés, began a dialogue with the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez to end the long-standing conflict. Sánchez called on Puigdemont on Friday to face justice. At the same time, he affirmed his willingness to enter into dialogue. While some separatists accuse Sánchez of oppression of Catalonia and call Aragonés a traitor, Puigdemont is again in the center of attention as an upright fighter for the Catalan cause through the night in police custody. And now let's go to Berlin in Germany. Never before have so many parties stood in a federal election as this year. It's 47. Most of them will only collect a very small number of votes. In the 2017 federal election, all of the small parties together achieved just 5% of the vote. They are not even mentioned by name, but as others form the smallest bar on the election evening, which is today, by the way, when I'm filming this for you, than yesterday. Normally, it's so. Perhaps that will change this year because in surveys, the others achieve up to 9%. According to experts, there are many reasons for this. There is, for example, a fragmentation of society. People have more specific claims than before and no longer feel represented by the former popular parties. The fact that for the first time in the history of the Federal Republic of Germany, there is no incumbent chancellor in office, or running while in office, is creating more uncertainty, but also more willingness to experiment on the part of voters. Then there are the consequences of the corona pandemic. Normally, parties who want to run in a federal election have to collect at least 2,000 signatures. It's a safety mechanism. If you run for the election, you really should mean it. But this year, a quarter of the usual signatures is enough. They can compete with a few hundreds supposed or actual supporters. Newcomers like the Climate List or the Volt Party are now mingling with permanent applicants such as the separatist Bavarian Party, which fights for the independence of the Free State and already sat in the Bundestag in the 1950s. Then there is Bündnis C, a fundamental Christian party that demands the right to vote for children as well. There's the ultra-left MLPD, which wants a 30-hour week with full wages, a garden party, and a party called Love, which fights for love and respect for all living beings and nature. It almost never happens that a single small party succeeds in getting over the 5% hurdle. Only the pro-European party Volt and the Free Voters, who co-govern in Bavaria and want to establish themselves nationwide as the new conservative power of the center. Those are looking for opportunities this year. At least 3% are currently in the polls for the Free Voters, the Freie Wähler. But the freak parties in particular are often not concerned with the 5% hurdles. They are already satisfied with a tenth. Anyone who collects more than 0.5% of the vote will receive a reimbursement for the election campaign costs. At least 83 cents per vote. In 2017, a good 200,000 votes were enough for this. In addition to the Free Voters, the Party and the Animal Welfare Party managed to pass the relevant hurdle. There isn't just one party towards one individual. There are more. But for example, there is the yoga party Human World. They have a guru. His name is Dada Madhuvidyananda. Because he's used to people not being able to pronounce his name, at the beginning of phone calls, he suggests simply people to call him Dada, which stands for brother. The 58-year-old is a yoga monk and also looks like this. Full beard, turban, robe. He does not stand for the Bundestag himself. Rather, he's the spiritual teacher of the candidates of his party. He sums up the principles that his organization shows as follows. The core of the human being is good, only sometimes he has negative thoughts that make him do the wrong things. With meditation, people find their way back to themselves. That is why he wants to bring meditation into parliament. Dada himself meditates 5 times a day. The first time at 4:30 a.m., then for 3 hours. Human World is the only party that pursues the goal of parliamentarians making decisions from a higher consciousness. But there are also small parties that are very similar to one another. A number of things have shifted in terms of climate protection, for example. In an election that seems as tight as this one, it could, in extreme cases, even have an impact on whether the Greens end up in 2nd or 3rd place. The P times 3 party, for example, sees veganism as a means against climate change. Anyone who eats a meatless diet can save 2 tons of greenhouse gases a year, explains party leader Roland Wegener. And the end of a carrot peeks out from behind of his shoulder when he's sitting in video calls, for example. The 46-year-old was a world record holder in backwards running for many years and campaigned for the spread of stair climbing as a sport. He tried out the vegan lifestyle for a guidebook and stuck to it because he was, as he says, more productive than ever before. Since then, he has not had any more lunchtime lows. The founding of the V times 3 party is related to a major trauma for the Greens, the Veggie Day. When the Greens called for the meat-free day for public canteens, Wegener was immediately taken with it. When they withdrew their demand in the face of the public outcry, yeah, I cried too, he saw his chance come. At that time, still a member of the Social Democrats, Wegener put Veggie Day on his party's program for the city council in Augsburg. When the SPD and CSU did not want to know anything about Wegener's plans in their coalition agreement, he founded his own party. As serious as his concern may be, people like him contribute to the fact that small parties are more likely to be ridiculed. Some draw attention to often overlooked grievances, like the urban hip-hop party. Above all, it sees itself as the political home of Germany's black population who do not feel they are sufficiently represented in the political party system. And they want to give a voice to people who are discriminated against because of their beliefs, their origins, or their sexuality. The party itself has a quota according to which no more than 50% of the members may be white men, and every 6th member should be a person with a disability. The chairwoman Sabrina Rahimi explains what all this has to do with music. Hip-hop is the music with which the discriminated give each other strength. The party does not only get approval from hip-hop listeners. Ramik said, "A white hippie couple, both retired, wrote to us that their pension is not enough to support them, but they plan to vote for us even if they don't listen to hip-hop. Instead, they listen to reggae." And shortly after I'm filming this and editing this and uploading this, I will go to our city center and to the town hall and be watching the results coming in from the general election. So, of course, when you see it in the morning, I will not have the results for you because, I had to film it before the election results come in. But it's always quite exciting to watch this in the city center, because all parties are there that are running in here in Münster, in my hometown, and the reactions are interesting. I hope I have something to celebrate tonight, but I will only know tonight, and it will be a long night, I guess. And it's an exciting thing, and I hope that people use their chance to vote, because the democratic vote is something billions of people on this planet envy us for. And not using this privilege is something I really can't understand. There's always someone you can agree with to a certain extent. Not voting is, from my point of view, throwing away a privilege. And so I hope that as many Germans as possible voted last night. When you see this, for me, it's today, and I'm quite excited. And of course, I keep you informed on the results as well. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.